A very good morning to you. We're just having a very nice banter here in studio with our current guests, and we want to just talk about a couple of issues that we feel are very important to you, our listener. And of course, we're very, very, very keen on ensuring that we change how conversations are had as far as radio is concerned. Just making sure that after every speech, after every time we turn off the microphone, we ensure that indeed the Kenyans are getting what they need in terms of just opening up their minds. And today's conversation is around echoes of colonial repression. Our guest is Mzalendo Mutemi wa Kiama. Mr. Mzalendo, welcome to the studio.
Asante sana.
This is your first time here, obviously.
Yes.
It's our first time hosting you, and we're hoping that we're going to have a blast of a time. Yeah, you're a community organizer yourself. Maybe you can just give us a brief of what exactly it is that you do before we get into the meat of the matter.
I think if you look at what has happened since last year, June 5th, although that was a major day.
Right.
There was a series of events that have been building over time. There's a saying that you cannot learn how to swim unless the water is up to your waist.
Okay.
And so what community organizers do is help communities build power to be able to challenge existing power structures to deliver what Kenyans need. For example, if I apply to the current situation, is that a lot of Kenyans have not been... We've been saying that we are still in a colonial country. We never got independence, but most Kenyans could not relate to that. But now if you look at what has been happening in the last few years, 2 years from the 2023 protests, 2024 protests, and then 2025 protests, it's very clear that the system have been pretending to be democratic, but once it's been pushed to the wall, the system has now shown its real character.
Colors, yeah.
And our work as community organizers is to, let's say, fill the water in the swimming pool. Through political education, we tunachambua mambo, tuna help Kenyans to analyze issues to come to their own conclusion.
Okay.
And the massive protest that you're seeing is because most of the young people have seen they are now out of the box, the box that they've been put in.
Okay.
And so as community organizers, we help communities deal with their issues, organize around those issues, because there's nothing that happens without organizing.
You just said 2023, I think, or did you, and then you went to 2024. Then of course you spoke about this year.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the protests that we had that were called by Raila Odinga, or you're talking about other protests?
No. That's actually one of the challenges that we have in this country. And if you're talking about echoes of colonial repression, the colonial trick is divide and rule.
Okay.
So I'm sure you've heard about that regarding how the white man came to this country. Is to create a binary that there are two sides, and you have to belong to one of those sides.
Right.
Us as community organizers have only one side, and that side is what is called Wanjiko, the citizen. We don't align with
any political
side unless it's going to benefit the people the communities that you're working with.
Okay.
So we might find us supporting one or the other, but that is always strategic. It's never affiliation of that getting into you're either with Baba or you're with Uhuru first, then Ruto first, second. So what we try to do through political education, not civic education.
Okay.
Civic education tells you what the constitution says, what your rights are and all that. And most Kenyans by now know what their rights are. It's being able to connect your situation, why you don't have water, why your kids cannot go to a good school, why medical services are expensive. Being able to connect that with your actions.
So that you've called it political education.
Political education.
All right.
Political education is being able to connect dots on how politics affect your life directly, not your community's life. Sisi Wajaluo tuko na Raila, sisi Wakikuyu tuko na Uhuru, sorry. Sisi Wakamba tuko na Kalonzo. That is divide and rule.
Okay.
You know, it's very deliberate, as you're seeing what is happening right now.
Yeah.
When the mass of young people have come together, the Gen Zs, and other Kenyans have joined them, it becomes a threat to the state because the state is not delivering. They are busy looting. So they have to be divided. That's why now we are seeing what are being called Guzi. it's about how do you divide these people. You have first to plant a seed in the mind of Kenyans that protests are riots. Remember, initially it used to be the word riot, which has left our nomenclature because people have, because of civic education,
we've matured from that.
What their rights are, and the right to picket is in the constitution and that kind of thing. But this state, to understand, it's called the Westphalian state. What it means is that when Europe was fighting among themselves, when there were small kingdoms and all that, they realized that they could not develop when they were divided. So they were brought together under what is called the Peace of Westphalia. You can Google it.
Okay.
Now that's the state that then came and colonized Africa and carved Africa into small countries, colonial and viable states, which means they can't work. Then they united as they divided us. If you look at the borders that we have in Africa, they were all carved out in Berlin in 1884-85. And those borders have been maintained. If you look at our border systems, like if you cross any border, whether it's land border or air border or sea border, the machines, you see signs saying funded by the people of the European Union.
Okay.
Now ask yourself why we have hard borders in Africa and we don't have hard borders in Europe.
In Europe.
And that division, whether it's Uganda, Kenya, or whether it's Kikuyus, Luos, those are divisions that keep us preoccupied with non-important issues. So as community organizers, what we've done now is help, like my work in the last 11 years, is provide this political education to help the young people of Kenya realize that there are only two enemies in this country. There are only two tribes.
Okay.
The haves and the have-nots. And once the Gen Zs have realized that, it doesn't matter what tribe they are, they've come out in numbers.
Mr. Kiama, why is, because Kenya has now been independent for 62 years.
We put quotes on that.
Okay, all right. But we've been here for at least that long, self-governing or whatever. When during this entire period, we are still talking about the same issue day in, day out, 60 years later. Tribalism, and the divisions that you've just spoken about. Why is it because the population doesn't get it? Because we've had people like yourselves and many other organizations speaking about the same thing. We've had activists who are not necessarily in an organization, but they talk about it. We even have leaders who've come out elected and they try and tell the population we need to move away from this. Why are we still there?
That's it's called the $1 million question, but that's not a question that does not have an answer. The population, for example, in terms of education and being able to discern, has been very different from the current population. Right now, the population we have in this country is 70% under 35, or what is referred to as youth by the Constitution. These are people who have gone to school,
right?
And even if they haven't gone to school, or even if they haven't gotten to a very high level of schooling, their devices, their TikToks and their X's and their Facebook is educating them, and the internet. So they have, I think internet penetration is over 80% in this country. So the citizen we have is informed. The challenge we have is that our leadership is still stuck in the old ways, and that's when you say we've never gotten independence. Because what happened is that you know about the freedom fighters, the Mau Mau and others, the Makatiliwa Mezas and others. When they fought for the white man to live, the white man left but handed over to the people who were working in his system. In this way, the white man said, I cannot hand over to people who have not gone to school.
Okay.
So who had gone to school? The sons and daughters of colonial chiefs.
Okay.
Yeah,
the Koinanges and
the Koinanges all over this country. Actually, there are many. You know, like if I mention those names, you guys will be sued because it's the who's who in this country.
Okay.
Now we are in the third generation, and these people, then because they had gone to school, who are clerks and supervisors in the colonial government, are the ones who are handed over. Let me just mention the Kenyattas, the Mishukis, the Modia Waris, all these people we see in our politics,
the political elite.
In the political elite. Now these people know they did not fight for land and freedom. Mama was a land and freedom army. They wanted independence. And what is the difference between land and freedom and independence? Independence means you want the white man to let you to run your affairs. Nobody fought for independence in this country. Nobody.
But that is what we are taught in history.
No, we got independence, but we did not fight for independence. We fought for land and freedom.
Okay.
There's a difference. Independence is...
But in fighting for the land and freedom, one of the byproduct is the independence.
Now, this is a trick. The trick is that the people who wanted independence were the people who were working for the white man. Now they were like, tumefika, now we can run our affairs. Who are these? These were the people who had been educated by the white man in the white man's way, and they were told civilization is joining the clubs, driving cars and doing all this.
Dressing in a certain way.
Having 30,000 acres of land, the one that the white man had. So these actually, the ones who wanted independence, took over the land that was supposed to go to the freedom fighters. And that has been our contestation for the last 60 years. Because the ones who fought for land and freedom never got the land and freedom. It went to the people who wanted independence. And those people, now up to the third generation, have been blocking any access to the ordinary people, to the dignity of the people. Like when you hear somebody sitting on 30,000 acres,
yeah.
And there are people who don't have land, the people who are sleeping in the streets and in the slums, that's the conversation that we've not been happening. And we've been distracted by Wakikuyu, watu wa Mlima, Somalis. I think that are some of the most marginalized people. Right now, they're the most vehemently anti-Kikuyu community. Yet, in business, they have worked together for for the last like 30 years. Kikuyus and Somalis have been working hand in hand.
Okay.
But today, a narrative has been introduced at watu wa Mlima ndio wanataka. Then, I know like last week on 25th of June, 2000. I don't want to use the word goons. It's Kenyans who are jobless.
Okay.
I think we need to remove that. Those words of division is actually answering your question.
Yes.
It's
why
when you introduce these words. Kuna goons, goonsies, na kuna Gen Zs. Already you are dividing people. These are young people who are jobless, who are given 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings. In Kisumu, 2,000 people are mobilized, and they were given 2,000 shillings each to make sure there are no demonstration in Kisumu, to maintain the narrative that
Kisumu is pro-Gavama, whatever.
And you can hear stories of people who are attacked every time they try to converge. And Kisumu violence is very different from the rest of Kenya.
Okay.
They have knives, they have pangas, they have, and people are hurt. But you won't see that thing in our media. It's not being reported.
Okay.
So that is what has kept us in that space. But the Gen Zs have said, no, we are tribeless. We are leaderless. We don't care about all those divisions.
Right.
But you see, the politicians are still trying to go back to the old script. Like when you unite Kalenjins and Luos, we are cousins. They are cousins. They say, actually, this cousin narrative did not start with Gachagua. It starts with we are Nilots.
All right. But they are Nilots.
They are Nilots, but
it's an ethnic
have they
grouping.
just discovered they are Nilots?
No.
You see?
Yeah.
They've been Nilots since time immemorial, since God's creation. So why is it now a narrative, a political narrative today? It's to divide. But divide and rule works this way. If I want to divide, like the three of us who are here,
yes,
and maybe we are all independent, and I want to build power, I say you guys are all Kambas, and me I'm Kikuyu. So you guys can unite against me.
Okay.
And then we create a narrative, and now we start to remember, hey, mi nimetoka. Then when you go to Kambas, you're like, mi nimetoka Makueni, mi nimetoka Kitui, mi nimetoka wapi. And then you create more divisions, and people get preoccupied. That's what we've been preoccupied with for the last 60 years. But the Gen Zs have said, enough is enough.
So you want to tell me that this political class, this political elite that is currently doing these divisions, a very small number, surely. We have millions of Kenyans who are educated, millions of Kenyans who, even if they're not educated, they still have the intelligence. You want to tell me that we are still unable to get out of that?
So, again, that now comes to the heart of what I do. Because people can be mobilized easily around an issue. 2023, 2024, 2025, around the finance bill. Single issue. Once the issue is off the table, people move on to their things. So we've not had people organizing around multiple issues, like nationhood, for example. What is Kenya?
Okay.
You know, these are, a lot of people just assume like you're in that box called Kenya, but are we a nation? You know, what is a nation? Shared values, shared beliefs, shared aspirations, and that kind of thing.
So we're like a company.
It's like you need a mission, vision, and that kind of thing. What is the mission of Kenya?
Okay.
Do we have one?
We don't.
Exactly.
But it is somewhere. I'm sure if we sing the national anthem, iko tu hapo.
There are words there. There are words there. Some of Kenya is Shima, you know, such things. Yeah.
Yes.
But they've not been crystallized in a way that if you ask an American right now,
right,
what is the American dream, they will tell you what the American dream is. What is the Kenyan dream? You know, maybe Kenyan dream is to get a job in a company, in government, and steal as much money as possible.
Actually, that is the Kenyan dream.
But that's a dream that has emerged from lack of dignity, lack of access, and that has been normalized and we've been socialized to expect that.
Right.
In fact, I think we're the only country that has a degree in procurement, which is clerical work. Why do you have a degree in clerical work? So that you can. I remember having an argument with my dad when he was asking. He wanted my stepsister, to go and do a degree in procurement. I'm like, Dad, are you serious?
Si ndio ingie pale kwa nini?
Pale kuna minofu.
Yes.
You're actually encouraging your daughter to go and be corrupt.
Okay.
You know, but that's why we've come, because that's the situation you're in.
Right.
So community organizing is about people. What has been lacking is bringing people to think for themselves, give them the tools to think for themselves, so that they can analyze the situation they are in and come to the conclusion. That is the work that we've been doing.
I want to bring in an argument in this whole issue. Yeah. Fine, Kenya has got 40 something tribes, and
officially 44.
Yeah, and others keep on adding depending on.
Officially they are 85.
Yes. So if we cannot run away from the fact that we have Kambas and Luos and Kisis and God knows what else. We can't run away from that. And each one of these cultures or tribes have got their own cultures. They've got their own way of doing things. Kuna wale wanatahiri, kuna wale watangoana meno, kuna wale watafanya sijui nini. Probably the problem is from that point, because I feel like my tribe should maintain its way of doing things, and then another one feels that their tribe should maintain a way of doing things. There's another tribe that feels there's a certain one that has been in power for a very long, or rather two tribes that have just been exchanging power from one election cycle to the other. Is it because we first of all have not addressed that issue, so that now we can address the whole issue of being a country? Like, I don't know, maybe that's the problem, because every time the tribal kingpins come back, they always come to zile za certain tribe has been in power for long, another so we need to be given the opportunity, and that is where they stick, and probably that's where they call for our emotions, and that's why when we get to the ballot, mimi naangalia mtu wetu.
You put your finger on it, and it's called, so that's a divide and rule actually. Because when you're divided, then you can be told the Kikuyus are the problem. Last election, the Luos are the problem. The other election, I don't know who are the problem. Always you externalize. That's the peace of Westphalia means to make peace, you must have war. Okay. You cannot make peace when there's no war. So you have to keep the population fighting each other, or imagining there's an imaginary enemy, so that then you can come and say, I'm the one who's going to unite the country. I'm going to do this,
defeat this enemy.
Kenyans live together. I come to your house, you give me sugar if I don't have sugar, salt, and that kind of thing, until politics comes in. You know, so that is not by default. It's by it's not by it's by design. It's by design that thing of reminding us. So the word we need to start using instead of tribe, which is a colonial language, we're talking about echoes of colonialism, is nations. The Kamba nation, the Kikuyu nation. There's nothing wrong with being a nation and having your own culture.
The Kisii nation.
The Kisii nation. Can we celebrate our nations? In fact, that's the mission of the other mission of the work that I do, Mzalendo Halisi Foundation, is let's celebrate our uniqueness. I don't know whether you ever went for the Kamba night in Carnival, Luo night.
I have.
Luo night.
I have.
Who cares what tribe? We go and enjoy, the
food, the music.
The music.
Yeah.
We don't care about tribes. In fact, most Kenyans, until you bring politics, we don't care about tribes.
We don't remember that.
We don't remember that you're...
True.
But when politics comes, these guys need to subdivide. There's this former governor of Bomet said, unakuja na ngunia ya kabila yako, umebeba kura za nini. So you have to mobilize your tribe, so-called tribe.
Yes.
And then you bring it to the table. Inasaki unaweka hiyo ngunia pale, and then tunasema sasa tugawanye hii nchi, utapata ministries ngapi, utapata nini. So that has been the way, but that is not now working. It's not working with the current youthful population who are exposed to a different world, to different expectations, threats, promises that are being made by politicians about jobs that they cannot provide. Because right now, a lot of the jobs that were being promised by Ruto in 2022 have gone with AI. So what jobs is he going to give Kenyans? And they cannot think beyond tribal mobilization. That's why a government can go and hire people, arm them with rungus and pangas and knives, and give them an assignment. Make sure you target women. So sexual violence, which is a colonial structure. Okay. It's a colonial violence that has been used since when Kenya became a
republic.
A republic. No. When Kenya became a colony, a protectorate.
Okay.
In the 1920s, the police, the current police as we have it, the structure, the ordinance that established it, 1935-36, said the purpose of the Kenyan police is to brutalize the population, the natives actually, to brutalize the natives into submission. It was on paper. Why? Because you had these few white men, mostly it was white men, who wanted to rule a population of natives, and the only way they could do that is using violence.
Okay.
And that has never changed. Even when you change from force to service, the attitude, the training has never changed.
Kiama, I want us to go back a bit, pre-colony. If I remember my history well, because after Standard 8, I don't think I did it again. But if I remember it a little bit, I think we were taught some of the things that Africans did even before the white man came. For instance, we used to raid neighboring communities to get their cattle, get their women, even get slaves to come and to slavery and so on and so forth. That was us doing that to ourselves. We were already brutal to ourselves even before. If I remember Shaka Zulu, didn't he have an army that went and just ikamaliza watuko in the name of him being the king of the Zulu people, not just the Zulu people, but of literally the entire Southern Africa. So Africans, we didn't need the white man to be violent.
No.
We were violent from before, and we brutalized ourselves actually.
Even before. The history that you read in school?
I don't know. Mi najua nilifunzwa kwa history class.
There's a saying,
yes,
history is written by the victors. Who are the victors? And we go back to the colonial time, who the white man handed over to. You are the people who determine the education system and what you learn. In fact, part of the reason why young people are saying no is because they are realizing the real history. There are a few. So even in terms of numbers, let's go to the Bible.
Yeah.
And you hear about the tribes of Israel. How many people do you think the tribe of when Joseph and was sold by his brothers? How many Jews were there in the world?
I don't know.
Most probably less than 100.
100? Like watu 100 ama 100,000?
100.
100.
These guys were goat herds in the desert. And this guy has 12 sons. And the 12 sons each has a family. And so how many people are those?
Okay.
You see, it's very small. But because we contextualize it with our modern numbers, when you think, in fact, when the Kenya got independence, how many people were there in this country? Yeah,
a couple of million.
About 7 million.
Okay.
So how many Kikuyus were there? How many Luos were there? How many Kambas were there? So when you look about, you think about these numbers, you have to look at a very small. So we are using nations. So the 44 nations of Kenya were very tiny in numbers, in terms of even being mobilized, but still they were more than the white people. So when you're looking at these things, like raids, Maasai raids, how many people are raiding?
the Morans would go to.
In fact, if you ask the people who have the actual history are dying of, not the written history, the actual history. And they will tell you that the raids were sport. It was a rite of passage for the young men. But it was also the wisdom of our communities. That they know, because of genetics, if a certain disease comes and like what was it, the one we had? COVID. If we don't have genetic diversity, it can wipe out the entire community. So when you go there and get ladies, usually it's women who are raided. That's it's unfortunate, but that's the nature of those communities. You are diversifying
your gene pool. Okay. That
was the wisdom of those days. And so the young men will go and get girls and they pretend we were not warlike.
So mademu akiisha Ukambani tuende huko kwa Masai tuchukue mademu wengine.
And that's why you see, I think even you look at Wakambas, you see them looking very different. Some look light skinned, others are dark skinned. Wengine kama uko na mapua unakaa kama umetoka Kisumu. Who knows?
Maybe somewhere in Malindi kuna Mjaluo.
Because now I'm not romanticizing it in a way that there was no violence. But the violence, the ones you are describing, like the raiding, and usually the Kambas are derided for slave trade.
Okay.
But who are the Kambas working for? It's the Arabs. All this structure of violence has been external. People coming in and mobilizing us, and also it's capitalism. It's introducing us to the money economy, and then the money economy makes us lose our humanity, lose our dignity and what we call Utu. In fact, part of the solutions we are offering as we do our political education right now is for us to rediscover our humanity. Because when we rediscover our humanity, then the divisions that have been planted into us, and it's not going to be easy, because you said it's 60 years, and then you add another since 1885 when this thing structurally and deliberately introduced to our education, making us forget our history. So it's about 400 plus years of colonialism. That is what has caught us in a way that we've forgotten that other history. The beautiful stories, the dance, the music, the intermarriages that we used to do. And because the people who colonize us write our history, we don't have memory. We've lost memory.
Okay.
So the internet
changed.
The internet has helped us remember some of these things, because now you're finding books that are in some libraries that you could not access. So you can now, when you read Sheikh Anta Diop, The History of Civilization, he tells you about a very different Africa. But that book was written in French. It was only accessible to academicians, and it was suppressed to make sure it doesn't spread. Even here in Kenya, there are books that were written in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that were banned, because that time the government used to be if it says you've banned a book, then you cannot find it.
Destroy it completely.
Right here in town, there's a library called Ukombozi Library. In that Ukombozi Library, even for example, I got into advocacy or activism when I was around 33.
Okay.
And I was number one in school all the way to uni. I thought I knew it all.
Yeah.
And many people like us exist across this country.
Right.
Until when I was 33 and I had a crisis in my life, and then I started asking questions. And then I found myself now in the advocacy space and community organizing, and they had to be politically educated. I found these books written by our contemporaries, 60s, 70s, and 80s, that were banned, but people kept one or two copies, and those copies are in the Ukombozi Library. So you can actually have someone make a photocopy of it. They actually do that. That's how they sustain themselves.
Okay.
They photocopy for you, and you read the real history that was actually banned, because there was a very deliberate effort to suppress information. Remember that time we only had VOK, Voice of Kenya, one radio station, one TV station, and the news was 15 minutes of the first
family.
No, it was boy. No, not the first family.
Yeah,
Mutukufu Rais,
the president. Yes,
Mutukufu Rais. And then amefanya, you create a godlike person, and that's one of the problems we are facing right now.
Okay.
Is that Ruto wants to be that Mtukufu Rais.
All right. I believe you had something. I cut you off.
I was just looking at we are we are post-independent, but still under colony. That's what we are saying. I'm now looking at what are some of the rules, laws that we've carried forth from the colony that are really affecting our political rights. You had talked of political rights.
The most important institution in enforcing colonialism is the police. Yeah. So I talked about the police, the ordinance that formed the police to brutalize natives into submission. That ordinance then is enforced using the police service. It's called police service. What? There is code, or I remember the word.
Act. Is it?
No. It's not the act. It's the. I remember the word, but it's actually the one that guides the police how to act in every situation. For example, before the new constitution, if you met a policeman came in here and we were 3 people and said disperse, you cannot question, you disperse, because the way to keep the natives from uniting, the divide and rule, was to give the policeman the power to ensure that no meetings happen that can discuss anything progressive. Remember the Chiefs Act, which has been reintroduced, which was removed by the constitution, but now it's been brought back. The standing orders, police standing orders, and that kind of thing. So there's a new one that has been introduced that is much more modernized, but they are still operating with the old one. And just like even the president has ignored the constitution, decides which like court orders to obey or not obey, depending on his mood or whatever it is that he wants. That is the colonial mentality. That who are you to tell me? The original constitution when Moi was Baba and Mama was the president is the law. I say it goes. You guys will implement and the whole government lies. Now the public participation. You're wasting my time. Because me, I want to go,
I want things to move my way.
I want things to move my way. That is the colonial mentality. What you're actually seeing is someone saying, yesterday the Minister of Interior tweeted a PSYOP video and called talked about Gen Z problems and Gen Z, like, you could see the anger. It's like, I think that tweet was drafted by Ruto. Because it's someone who cannot understand what people are complaining about. What are these kids, children? They keep calling infantilizing.
Tuongea na watoto.
Watoto or 35-year-old. Like, who are they to even ask me anything? To question. That is a colonial. If you watch, I was watching, actually last night I went to watch the trial of Dedan Kimathi. And you see the attitude of the colonial soldier, the white colonial soldier. They used to call our fathers and grandfathers boy.
Come here, boy.
It's dehumanizing. It's removing your utu. That's why you're talking about restoring utu. If so that is the attitude. That is the thing that we've been unable to deal with in terms of how do we dignify ourselves and rediscover our humanity so that we don't do some of these things that we do to each other, like battering each other in the streets with sticks, yet we will go home hungry.
Yes,
both of us.
After imekuchapa tunarudi nyumbani tunalala.
Hiyo the 1000 kwani itaishi itakaa for how long? That 1000 bob that you've received to go and beat up somebody and injure them. There are people in hospital right now. My comrades, 3 of them, I'm also part of a movement called Kongamano la Mapinduzi, and we're organizing to take power in this country to can have a government of the people that really is democratic. They were arrested on their way to a community organizing meeting in Mombasa. They were picked up from a bus by DCI, and then they were labeled goons. And they are the organizers of goons. Every Kenyan knows it. They are famous people. They are Mzalendo Garang, Generali, Mutunge Mwangi. They are known. In fact, a lot of these protest songs that are in the streets are the ones who have taught Kenyans and Gen Zs those songs, and they are happy, exuberant people who abhor violence as we organize non-violently. In fact, that's the other thing. if the government does not know how to deal with non-violence, Kenyans peacefully with their smartphones, their handkerchief, water,
Flag.
maybe a flag. The government does not know how to deal with those because the government knows violence and it has monopoly of violence legally. So you have to introduce violence so that you can repress, which is what we saw on June 25th.
Yes.
And what is this government that is unable to govern to the point of where it hires a militia? Because that's a militia. You bring in a militia across the country, 23, was it 27 or 23 counties? You're mobilizing, I think it was in Olkalau where...
27 counties, yeah.
So I saw, that pained me. I saw, there was a police station where the county government of Olkalau had parked cars, trucks, and these big Isuzu for whatever, like they got what I taught you or whatever, those
Land Cruisers.
luxury 4x4s.
Oh, the limousines.
No, these ones that the pickup, the double cabin
SUVs.
the double cabin pickup. I think I saw 5 touched with county government numbers. Those are our taxes. Someone hired people to go to a police station. The police moved away. Because there's no way you can go to a police station to burn cars unless the police have left. They allowed it, and then it was recorded. And
so you're saying the police excused these people to do this chaotic
I'm sure they were
stuff?
under instruction, because you have to create that narrative that protest equals to violence.
Allow me to digress for a second. We have seen... Okay, the question I want to ask is, what is so unique about Kenya? Because we have seen other countries as well. They have their own issues, but they are unable to do the kinds of things that we have done here in terms of demonstrations or just organizing and mobilizing people. Nigeria at one point had the End SARS movement, which after a while it happened, died down. South Africa, we have seen probably back in the day they had, but nowadays they're not as vocal as they used to be back in the day. I can hardly point any other country, and yet we know countries are also going through their own problems. We know our neighbors are going through their own problems. They are unable to go to the streets the way Kenyans are. Yet we go to the streets every day. Kenyans die. Kenyans are maimed. People are abducted, disappeared, and all that. So what is so unique about us that we are able to go to the streets?
That's a very pertinent question. But you see, what you're saying is that just a few years ago, we were those people who would complain in our homes, in our churches, in bars and wherever.
And leave it there.
That is the millennial and the Gen X, which I'm Gen X, and the boomers.
Okay.
And the reason why that generation was like that is because of this, again, structural violence that they were experienced. If your mom would stop you from protesting, or your dad, because they saw the brutalization that happens when you resist government. So remember, again, going back to the colonial police, they make sure that they meet a lot of violence, that when you try to go out, it's you among yourselves who are stopping each other. You're sitting in your brother, tunaenda maandamano, usiende utarepiwa, utapigwa, utafanya nini. That is the same script. We're talking about echoes of colonialism. That is the same script. So what has happened is that once you have a generation that cannot find jobs, or even the jobs they find, because a lot of them are self-employed doing online work and that kind of thing, and then this government that has not provided infrastructure
for them
now wants to tax them to death. What do you expect? And then people are much more informed, and they can exchange, they can speak to each other. Because remember what I talked about, when you had one radio station, you could control the narrative. Right now we are having one story, someone else is having another story somewhere else. There are so many Kenyans wanachambua mambo all over this country, and they are having conversations about issues that concern them. Unfortunately, we have a political class that is still stuck in the same way. It would be much easier, if you ask me, to make sure that the country is productive, the young people have jobs, and they are occupied doing other things, or even make education free. If they can't find jobs, they can go and further their education, rather than trying to bottle them and keep them in the way that this government has been trying to do. We are in a very different time So why are Kenyans doing this? Because of the work that activists and community organizers have been doing. First, the 90s, then that led to the elections of 2002 when Mwai Kibaki came into power.
Right.
And then a lot of activists got into government and started eating. Then you had so Kenya does this thing in 10-year cycles, give or take a few years.
Right.
Then 2010 you had a new constitution, and the new constitution gave us rights. And then there's been that civic education. A new generation has come in that understands its rights, but also understands its place as active citizens, because the reason why active citizenship is in the constitution, public participation, is very deliberate. It's actually to attain what we are having now, what you're talking about.
Right.
A citizen who is involved in their own governance. They're not just you vote and then you wait for another 5 years you vote. No, it's daily. How much have you allocated? You're actively asking questions. In fact, my view of it is that every Kenyan should be an activist. Activism is what? Is asking, there's supposed to be water in our taps. There's no water. Why is there no water? That is activism. But it's been demonized. There are potholes outside here. Who's responsible? We have an MCA we've elected. There's a county government. County government was allocated 10 billion
For roads.
Why is nobody doing their job?
Okay.
You know, I see people on social media saying, unajua hii Kenya ni ngumu. The president has so many things to do, or the MP or the governor or whoever. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
If you're employed here to do this work,
Do it.
if you don't do it, you'll be fired before you know it. Before you even say, movie, you'll be gone. Your boss here will
Finally.
will fire you. That's the way it should be with the politicians.
True. I'm looking at the economic freedom of our country. So many times we've talked of loans that we are supposed to pay. Are we still under colony in terms of economy?
No. That's an aspect of colonialism. That's thank you for that question. You see, the last 400 years that I talked about has been about extracting. The white people came to the world after they came from the caves. Then they came to the world and found pyramids, beautiful land, peaceful people, and that's why the narrative of violent African tribes was perpetuated, because they had to cast us in their own image,
Right.
to justify the violence that they unleashed on us.
We were called barbaric. Yeah.
Yet we built pyramids, but you're barbaric. We built Zimbabwe, and all these kingdoms that we had then. So, when they saw this, they're like, how are you gonna do? We need to build enough capital and wealth to be able to be. It's an issue of self-esteem and dignity. I think they were like, hey, as we've been living in caves in Europe, in the cold of Europe, now huku kuna jua Kenya, kuna beaches, beautiful beaches and that kind of thing. So a system was created to extract. The railway that we have in Kenya, the old railway, even the new one, but the old railway initially was to extract resources from the colony that started in Uganda, Kenya, and all those Nanyuki, wherever where that railway is, it's take to Mombasa and ship, because then air freight was not what it is today. Take it to Mombasa and ship it to Europe. And that was done by France, it was done by Netherlands, it was done by the UK, it was done by... So then the slavery that happened in West Indies, the slaves that were caught to go and work in farms, sugar farms, and cotton farms in West Indies in the US. That is the economic structure that we have. In Kenya, the coffee, the tea, the wheat, all these things, when they came in here, was about creating... In fact, there's a very amusing... Something I didn't believe when I saw, that the way Kenyans were introduced, Africans in Kenya were introduced to taxation.
Yes.
Because when the white man came, like, you're telling me I need to go and work and do what? But I'm fine. I have my farm there, I'm farming, I have my goats, I'm my cow. I don't need to go and work. But because the system needed to extract, from your pockets.
Yeah.
You have to be introduced to succession. Men were told the number of breasts in your house determine how much tax you pay.
The number of
breasts, matiti,
okay,
determine how much tax you pay. So you're told maybe 20 cents. So your wife, your daughters, whoever is living in your house, you
don't men also have breasts? So they didn't count hours.
About matiti. Sasa
wanawake. Okay.
Because the men had refused to go and work, so you have to go and work to justify. You're being taxed now by this colonial structure. To be able to pay that tax, then you have to go and work in a farm, in a coffee farm, or in a tea farm, or in a wheat farm, or in a maize farm, or sugarcane farm, depending on where you come from.
Yeah.
And that is the same thing. It's extraction. That's the same thing that has continued up to now. That's why you say we are still in that structure. So even the taxation that is happening now, the IMF, because what change was the structure of how it's done. How do you hide this? Make people, what people call jobs is actually wage slavery, if you use a different language.
Yeah.
It's getting people to come to work. You can clothe it in whatever kind of language.
Yeah.
But it's actually the reason why you're working is so that you can you can afford to buy everything, but also to pay taxes.
Yes.
And the KRA is the extraction. So how do you then ensure that you keep extracting from Africa, from the so-called global south? Give them loans. Give them loans for projects that are unproductive. Okay? So that's a debt trap. If you got a loan to look at what is this farm called, the 1 million acres in Tana River, how much money has been sunk in that?
Galana.
To produce 10,000 bags of maize in 1 million acres. Yet UN, WHO, World Food, is it World Food, WFO, World Food Organization?
Yes.
Says
WFP.
That WFP.
Yeah.
Of the 8 billion humans on this planet, 63% of them are fed by small-scale farmers. So there's no history where farming 100 million, or rather 1 million acres, has ever led to food security in a country.
Okay.
And Kenya issue is not food. We have a lot of food. It's distribution of that food.
But we are told every single time, we have to import eggs, or we have to import milk, or we have onions. I think we get them from Tanzania.
That's now, because when
so
you
it's an artificial shortage.
It's an extraction.
Okay.
Because when you import, you can give a kickback.
Okay.
But when you produce in the farm, you can't tell the farmer kickback. Even our education system now is about whatever.
Yeah.
Even our health system. Remember when Uhuru brought in Cuban doctors?
Yes.
Yet we had 4,000 unemployed Kenyan doctors. But he brought in why? Because to extract, when you make it a deal, 10 billion to bring in Cuban doctors, one lump sum, you can take 10%.
So you can get like a billion.
But if you employ 4,000 doctors, to get a cut, you'd have to tell them, negotiate with each doctor. So they give you a cut. So you'd rather bring a lump sum of doctors from Cuba rather than employ. It's extraction. That mentality of in Kikuyu we say unakulanga pahali umeajiliwa. That's that mentality, which is interestingly a product of our colonialism again. Talking about echoes of colonialism.
So Mr. Kiama, you're saying that with your organization you're trying the level best you can to ensure that we are politically educated. How effective are your efforts? Any success stories? Can we say that we have liberated minds in Machakos or Makueni, or we have been to Kisumu, and what we did, we can see the fruits? Can we quantify this thing?
It can be quantified, first of all, in the Gen Z uprising of last year. So one, you'll find this documented in a few places, but mostly not publicly. But I and a small team captured X for the citizens of Kenya. That time it was Twitter. So these hashtags you see are not an accident.
All right.
What X was then in 2012, 2013, 2014, up to 2015 was what Instagram is today, where you'd share, Mushene, who has slept with who has done a boob job, who has done what, those things, yeah. What you find in Instagram. Udaku, which is okay. It's part of our society.
Right.
But we went there and deliberately fronted pro-citizen hashtags. Made sure that you could trend Katiba, public participation, unsexy hashtags. And we deliberately built a community, built a movement called Maskani across the country. By the time I left that organization, we were like 14. We had 14 hubs of groups of Kenyans across this country: Nakuru, Kitui, Mombasa, Kisumu, Garissa. And these are citizens who used to come together, look at their society and look at their issues because all politics is local, and then speak to those issues. Let's say we have these 10 major issues. Let's pick 3 which are a priority. And then they would share the information with us. And then we'd say, okay, on Friday we are discussing garbage in Nakuru County. You'd have someone like James Okibia, who was a student at Egerton and a street photographer. And his side passion, apart from whatever, when he was a student, because he used to do photography to pay for his school fees, was document plastic pollution in rivers, in culverts, in dump sites. And we created a hashtag called ban plastic something KE. And that hashtag trended nationally. And it got the attention of Judy Wahungu, who was the Minister for Environment at that time.
Right.
And within 2 years, single-use plastics had been banned in this country. So that's showing.
So there's impact.
There are many stories I could tell. I don't think we have enough time.
Actually, we have a minute.
Yeah, but there are many such stories. But the main achievement is capturing Twitter for citizens, or X for citizens.
All right.
Which is what then the Gen Zs have used for mobilization. You remember when I saw that Twitter space that had over 60,000 people, I was like, tumefanya kazi nzuri. But kazi haijaisha. Because now, and you saw people coming from TikTok, the young kids coming from TikTok to X, and X became the mobilization platform.
Yes.
So that's part of the work that we have done.
All right.
Not I alone. It's us.
Team.
It's a team, and because the solutions to the challenges we have are within the people. So we are building a movement to be able to solve some of these challenges that we face.
Unfortunately, that's the time we have. I feel like I've gotten so much from you, and I feel like this conversation has just begun. We'd like to invite you again, if you will allow.
Anytime.
Please, Kuja, let us know especially about the history that you've spoken about, the history that we were given. That
next time, bring me for 2 hours.
Yes, the history that apparently isn't ours. But thank you so much.
But remember Ukombozi Library, yeah? So Kenyans can go to Ukombozi Library. They do lend out the books, or they can photocopy for you. So it's all very old titles, so that they don't really sell those titles because they're not in print, but they can print for you, then you buy a copy. Let's educate ourselves politically.
Yes.
Let us be active citizens.
All right, thank you so much. That's where we come to a close as far as our conversation today is concerned, but clearly you have seen that we need to do that and much more.